Welcome to the University School True Crime Podcast. This episode is about the Black Dahlia murder. I am Jordan Heiser.
I am Cameron Jiver.
I am Tristan Jackson.
And I'm Joey Valerio.
And Joey and I are the co-hosts of this podcast. The Black Dahlia, also known as Elizabeth Short, she got her nickname because her friends decided to call her that because of a movie that was out at the time called the Blue Dahlia. And she always wore a ton of black. She was born on July 29th, 1924 in Hyde Park, Boston, Massachusetts. She ended up dying January 15th, 1947 in Leimert Park in Los Angeles, California at age 22. So one part about this case is her dad was not very supportive of her in general, but then was also really sketchy when she was found dead. So when she was younger, her dad faked his own death to move to California. And then he later sent her a letter admitting what had happened. And as she got older, her dad invited her to come live with him. So I don't know what you guys think about that, but to me, that just kind of seems like...
Yeah, it's definitely sketchy. I mean, I've read up, I've done a bit of research on this case, and the father is definitely one of my prime suspects here.
I mean, I don't know about either of you two, but it just... When there's somebody like that in one of these cases, at least to me, it just always... It complicates the case because as much as they can be cleared as a suspect, it's still always a little iffy.
There's a lot of evidence that goes against her father. I'll say that. It's not...
Yeah.
There's a lot that, kind of disproves his involvement, but there's also... I feel like the bad outweighs the good here.
Yeah.
There's just a lot more evidence that just... In my opinion, it's just... He's very sketchy, and... I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be more about him later on.
Yeah.
And you'll see where that sketchiness kind of comes into play later into this. But onto her career in life. So she decided to move, and when she moved, she decided to go to Hollywood to make it as a big actress. And she really wanted to find fame in Hollywood, because obviously that's where all the big stars come out of. That's where they all start and they get big, because there's these massive actors there, massive movies, stuff like that. So that's what she was chasing when she decided to go there. So when she arrived in Hollywood, she initially started really, really low. She didn't even start as an actress. She started as a cashier and a waitress, which, I mean, if you look at anybody that, even now, somebody that comes out of college, they don't start with usually a massive job. Or if they're in college, they don't have a massive job. They have this low-paying job that just gets them by.
It's very, very typical of a Hollywood actress or actor to work as a waitress or,
kind of try to get their name out there a little bit.
Kind of get those, minimum wage jobs as they're trying to, chase that dream.
And hopefully get a connection while you're doing it.
Yeah, no doubt. Got to figure out something to do before you can really try to achieve what you want to do.
Yeah, and you need money to support your dreams.
Yeah, in your city, so you got to figure out something to get there.
And when she was doing these cashier and waitress jobs, she had periods of unemployment. And it really went against what she wanted, because she ended up struggling getting minor acting roles. Which, I mean, obviously, if you know Hollywood, is a very competitive scene, so she obviously had a lot to go through, but you would think, at least if you decide to pack up and just move across the country, because she was born in Massachusetts, so if you decide to pick up and move across the country, you would think at least you had some sort of connection to get a minor role. Yeah. Just to get your name out there.
Yeah, I feel like you got to have a plan. If you're going to pack up and just move all your stuff, you wouldn't just do that without, you got to have some kind of plan of what you're going to do later. I mean, she kind of just packed up and moved with no connections, no plans, nothing.
Right, this is very much, it seems pretty impulsive.
Yeah. So, obviously we were talking about her dad, and one major struggle for her when she was in Hollywood was her housing. So, obviously her dad moved to LA, California, and so she decided to stay with her dad for a little bit. But when she moved in with her dad, shortly after she got kicked out. And so she ended up deciding to live with other people, which obviously, at least nowadays, that wouldn't be very smart because of, you know, there's so many bad things that could happen just from that because you don't know who you can trust, at least now.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. Now, like, you know, that's why Amber Alerts, stuff like that. People just getting kidnapped and taken.
Yeah, a lot of bad people out there.
It's a little weird, too, that her dad kicked her out. That makes me even a little more sketch of him. I mean, you know,
maybe
it's a little more.
Yeah.
At the same time, maybe the father thought she was a failure from, you know, trying to prove her dream of being an actress, but it's not, like, going the way she planned it, so maybe he just doesn't have faith in her anymore, so he doesn't want to.
That's not like an easy thing to do either. Being like to make it in the acting business, that's not an easy thing to do. And like I'm assuming her father probably knew that, and so how slim her chances were of actually making it, and so that's probably factored into why he kicked her out.
Yeah. And I mean, as we'll see later on, living with other people really kind of went against her because those were some of the biggest suspects for people that she was either freeloading with, which a lot of people said she was claiming, or that they claim she did, is that she was freeloading off of other people and the people that she was living with. Basically that she would stay for a night on their couch, or say that she would, and then she would end up staying longer than that and run off of their fame and success.
Oh, wow.
So she was kind of just leeching off of anybody she could find just to try and get that little bit of a role, which, you know, obviously we can't really talk a lot bad about her because at the end of the day, she did lose her life at age 22. So, like, obviously with a lot of different cases, you can say some bad things, but, like, at the end of the day, you got to realize that this person did end up losing a life.
Yeah.
So, like...
It's never... No matter what happens, it's never as serious enough where someone should end up losing their life. So
Right.
Yeah.
Like, she was trying to make a living, and it just kind of went downhill.
Right.
I mean, I guess it's understandable. I mean, when you're at a low point, get any edge you can to lift yourself up and get to the point you want to be. I mean, many others have done that to get where they want to be at now and be successful. So I understand it, but at the same time, you might want to extend what you say. I'm staying at 9, and I may be here a little longer than you think.
Yeah. At least give them a heads up.
Yeah, right. At least, like, update them as you stay. Like, you know, maybe I have to stay a little bit longer. And part of the thing about her is that she would really surround herself with these type of people, with all these, like, not necessarily high fame, but, like, these people that she can work off of their fame and success for her own benefit. And, I mean, one of the people that she stayed with was a man named Mark Hansen. And Mark would have a couple different women stay at his house over time. And basically, other people kind of noticed that she did not have much of an income, and she would only eat and drink when other people were around. So she kind of starved herself and not necessarily made it hard for herself to live, but put herself in a position where it was kind of necessary for her to live off of other people. It was necessary for other people to be around so that she could actually live.
And the thing about LA, you know, it's expensive for me.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, their taxes are way different than other states' taxes. I mean, everything's just a lot more money than usual places. So.
Right, like you look at the prices there now, imagine what they were in the 40s. Yeah, they were less, but money then did not mean as much as it did now.
It's the value of a dollar changes a lot throughout history.
Yeah, that goes even more to you gotta have a plan when you're moving across country. You can't really. I mean, I know she was gonna stay with her dad, but I mean, you gotta have backup plans and stuff like that. Especially moving to somewhere like California, where obviously things are expensive.
And it's a huge city. I mean, you could get lost at any minute in time if you're not being focused or watching around yourself.
Yeah. And as she was doing these kind of staying with other people and kind of living off of them, she had a possible affair during this period. So one of the men she stayed with was a man by the name of Robert Red Manley, or people would just call him Red Manley. So he claims that they had never slept together, but he had another wife and a child. The thing about his other wife and child, though, they didn't see each other much. So he would not see those two very much at all. But the thing about Red is he was the last person to see her alive. So obviously that really puts him into a suspicious spot and makes him one of the prime suspects. But kind of as you'll see later, there's some key points with the other suspects that really kind of put them into a bad position too.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's deep. That's really deep.
Yeah, that's kind of like big.
Yeah.
You know, if you're the last person to see someone alive, you're automatically suspect number one. So.
Yeah, a lot of cases you'll see that the last person who saw them alive was indeed the person who ended up killing them.
Right.
Yeah, and the fact that she got caught up in something that, I don't know if she tried to, you don't know if she was trying to get caught in an affair or not, but either way she did.
I mean, you never know with an affair too. Maybe he was trying to end it and she wasn't or something like that, and there was a disconnection, disagreement, and it got a little more serious than it should have.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you see that with a lot of cases, especially what you two were talking about, is you'll see where somebody won't mean to be in a situation like that, but they are, and then it ends up somebody is dead.
Escalating.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of cases that I haven't even gone very in-depth into or wrote about or anything that they've been exactly like that. It's just, I can't even count how many I've seen like that. Because that's just so common with just the distrust, at least now especially. Like then, maybe not as common, but the distrust now between just people in general, that kind of...
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I mean, either now, you can't really trust anybody. Rather you're an adult, teenager.
Right.
Yeah.
You've got to be careful with who you get yourself involved with because you never know.
No doubt.
Okay, so... A very important date was January 8th. So, one place that I myself am very into is the Biltmore Hotel in California, LA. It is this very, very nice hotel, and I've seen many people just kind of go around because it's supposedly a haunted hotel, and this case is one of the reasons why people say it. And so basically, she got a ride to the Biltmore Hotel, and Red was the one that drove her there. He had ended up having dinner with her, and then they went back to her room. After that dinner, she didn't feel well, so she slept in the chair where he slept on the bed. So, I mean, that kind of puts me into her personality a little bit, is that, at least in this case scenario, she kind of gave up her bed to him, even though it was her room. Obviously, she didn't feel well. I don't know how to interpret that, at least myself, but that's just kind of... Because I've gotten a lot of mixed things just based off this a little bit, at least.
No doubt, after saying that, I mean, it's like, did he, tamper with the food?
Yeah. And I mean, that was all according to him. It wasn't her saying that she didn't feel well. It was after he was interrogated, according to him, she didn't feel well. So that is, I mean, I didn't even think about that until you guys mentioned that, but that could be definitely a big part of this.
Yeah. And she gave up her bed. That's weird to me. If she was sick, why didn't he give up her? Why didn't she say, I'm taking the bed? That's really weird.
Right.
How she took the chair.
Yeah, that's definitely...
So, he says that the last he saw of her was the next day when he left the Biltmore, and apparently she was in the lobby making phone calls. We don't know to who, we don't know how long they were, we don't know what they were about. That's just all we know. She was making phone calls in the lobby. So, many state that after Red had dropped her off, she headed to the Crown Grill bar, and that place is now known as the Club Galaxy in LA. I don't know much about that place. I looked it up a couple times just to see what it was. I don't know a lot about it, so I don't really know what it was or what it is right now. I mean, I guess you can kind of guess based off the name, but I personally don't know. So here is January 15th, the day that she supposedly died, or the day that she was found dead. I will say there are some parts of this description, at least, that can get a little bit, I guess, sensitive. Obviously with me, because I'm so invested in this stuff, it doesn't really bother me. But there are some descriptions that can be a little
graphic.
Yeah, there are other cases where it gets worse, but this is at least one to me where you just... So, there was a woman by the name of Betty Bursinger. So, she left her house and was walking to a shoe repair shop with her daughter. Around 10 a.m., they were coming up the street, and they were at the corner of Norton and 39th. So, she looked into the ditch, and she saw what she thought was trash. And she said later on that she thought it was a mannequin. As she got closer, she realized it was a body. When she realized it was a body, she grabbed her daughter and ran to a nearby house where they called 911. When authorities got out there, there was a massive crowd around this. Because if you think about, for example, the OJ case, look how quickly there was a crowd around his house and around Nicole's house when that happened.
No doubt.
So just imagine, in this very populated area, how many people were around. So the authorities ended up covering her body so that people couldn't see, or at least what the scene was. So they took fingerprints of her and eventually determined that it was Elizabeth Short. So during the investigation, she was so scared, Betty, being she, was so scared, and this body was messed up. It was very brutal. If you guys know the Joker, I think from at least some of my research, the Joker was kind of based off of this case. How he has the slits, or like the face paint, the red face paint on the side of his mouth. When she was found, she had that cut into her mouth. It was just a slit. It wasn't like her entire mouth was cut. It was a slit from her lips to about the bottom of her ear.
Wow.
To make it look like just a constant smile. And like I said in here, kind of giving her a Joker face. So here's where it gets a little weary.
Gruesome.
Yeah. So she was found severed in half and drained all of her blood. She was apparently ghost pale, according to Betty, and that's why she thought it was a mannequin. Their initial thought, with the way that she was laid out in kind of a sexual manner. So they instantly tested for sperm, semen, anything like that. They didn't find anything to that regard. So they believe that she was killed somewhere else and then brought there. And another thing that kind of supports that point is that there was no blood found on the body or around her body where she was laid. So the thought was she was killed somewhere and then brought to that location for everybody to see, for somebody to find her. But it was done so surgically that it left no trauma to the internal organs or bones. So you'd have to think that has to be someone with training in this aspect that knows how to be so precise and so careful that they don't do damage. I don't know why you would want to do that, but that's just what this person did. Obviously, there are very sick people, so
that means
I couldn't tell you.
To do that, they had to spend a lot of time with the body. I mean, her dead body, meaning, this person they pretty much don't have feelings, and they lost all emotion pretty much.
At the time that she was found, she was long dead. Mm-hmm. And so, it's just, there's a lot of time there where someone who is obviously, clearly very messed up in the head, they just could sort of do whatever they wanted to
No doubt, the only type of group that I could think of that's really good at this is serial killers. They do that for a living, but they're those people are dead I mean, like, what I mean by dead is, like, they're horrible people. I mean, they know exactly what to do when they kill somebody.
Right.
Because they've done it over and over
They're
again.
practiced.
It's not new to them.
Yeah.
I mean,
a lot of them get joy out of it. I know that I've seen some documentaries on serial killers. A lot of them either get joy out of it or they just don't care anymore. They've lost human emotions.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big point in a lot of serial killer cases, is that they're either emotionless, they don't feel anything, they don't care about somebody else's life, or it's just come to the point where they break and they just got to take it out on other people.
Right.
no doubt.
As we'll see later on, the person they think did this could have been a serial killer, but they're not 100% sure. So what the police decided to do is they put out flyers and tried to get information. And they stated that Short was 5'6", she had black hair, green eyes, and they kind of sexualized her in these flyers. They said, you wouldn't think that a police flyer would say that somebody is very attractive when they're trying to find out information about a person. But then they went on to say that she had bad lower teeth and her fingernails were chewed too quick. So basically that's like very, very short. I don't know. I think that was a good idea on their part to put flyers out, but I think the way that they did it could have been adjusted a little bit so that it wasn't necessarily worded the way that it was.
No doubt.
So January 24th is 9 days after she was found, but this was kind of an important point for this case. There was a letter that was sent to the police department, and it was all of magazine cuttings that were all cut up in different ways. And basically they were placed to spell out, here is Dahlia's belongings. There is a letter to follow. And so basically, you've seen a lot of other cases, they'll put magazine cuttings and everything like that to just make sure their handwriting is not identified. And that's really what this person tried to do. And basically they doused all of this in gasoline, which apparently removes any trace of who wrote them, like fingerprints, stuff like that.
Yeah, sense, fingerprints, anything. Basically any identifying, like, anything they could use to identify where this letter came from was just gone. So they essentially, the police still had nothing to go on, even though they were given letters.
And I mean, like, I took a forensic camp over the summer.
Yeah.
So, like, and one of the things we covered was, like, fingerprinting and people trying to change their fingerprints and hide them and get rid of them and things like that. And then, if I remember correctly, they said gasoline can work to an extent, but there's a certain point where it doesn't work.
Yeah.
That's if I remember correctly, but in this person's case, obviously, in the mind of a serial killer or a killer in general, it was smart.
It worked to their
In the mind of us,
Yeah.
we think it's sick and we don't like it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what they sent to her, or to the police of her, was her belongings. It was her birth certificate, her social security number, photos that belonged to her personally, and her old address book. So I really don't know where to go with that, because
I do gotta say here, I mean, we have it down here is that there was 13 letters that were sent to the police, and they were just, like, basically taunting them, and I gotta say that's a very common theme that I've noticed with serial killers, is that they'll sort of taunt the police and the press by sending letters. And like, you notice it with the Zodiac Killer and Jack the Ripper. There's just it's kind of, they kind of turn it into a like sick sort of game in their minds, and it's
Yeah, I did
unsettling.
some. I've done some on the documentaries that I was talking about earlier. A lot of them, not necessarily want to be caught, but they play like a cat and mouse game with the police. They enjoy the thrill of almost being found. So a lot of times they'll leave, they'll leave clues pointing directly to them, so that they can run away or something like that. But a lot of them enjoy that.
It's exactly like the Ted Bundy case. I mean, that dude was a serial killer. He went out for, females who were attractive to him and then killed them. I mean, and he did get caught, but he escaped again. And then finally they did, catch him and kill him. But I mean, he was taunting them almost the whole time.
Yeah.
Leaving his evidence behind of, the head, skulls cracked.
Yeah, like that's like the Golden State Killer. He sent letters to the police that had his own DNA, like, in them. Like, he would have many, many things that had his DNA that he just sent to the police because he never thought that DNA analysis and stuff like that would get to the point that it is right now. And he ended up getting caught because of the advancement in technology. So, I don't know.
That's why now advancements in technology it helps you definitely for these certain cases. But, in general now, since you have it, it's, really helpful. But back then, in the 40s, you wouldn't have found out anything.
Right. They had nothing. They didn't know. It was a lot easier to get away with murder up until probably around the 80s and 90s where technology started advancing.
Okay, so on to Beth's father again. So, when Beth was found dead, her father refused to identify her, and her mom had to come out to identify her body. So, Beth's mother was informed by a reporter, but when the reporter had contacted her, they said that they needed more information about Beth because she had won a beauty contest and they were trying to do a piece on her. And once her mom gave all this information to them, they actually revealed to her that Beth was found dead. So,
That's really weird that her father didn't identify her.
But I'd like to know more about her childhood. Why does her mom come in here now than before? Before we never heard anything about her mother. We just heard about her and her father. So why does she just come up now instead of way beginning in her younger ages?
I think part of that is because there's not a lot of information about her childhood. I think the reason why there's a lot about her father is because of how sketchy he was from her childhood to when she was found dead.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the reason why there's a lot about him. And I really think the reason why they included her mother is because of how cruel they informed her about Beth's death.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't think somebody, when they're informing you about your child being dead, they would say they won a contest and so they needed information about them.
Yeah, that's totally messed up.
That's.
I feel like we're skipping a few steps there.
Yeah.
You kind of. Also, why are they focused on the competition if she's dead?
Like they're trying to. Are they trying to write a piece about her, competition? Or they? It just seems a little weird. After she died, they're trying to write about a competition that she did.
I don't even know if she did that competition because I never saw something that said she actually did it. So she might have, but she might not have. But according to what I've found, she didn't even do a competition. They just made that up so that, I don't know, just a way to tell her mom and kind of mislead her. I don't know. I just don't understand it.
That makes the situation way more sketchy. It was already a little weird, and now it's that's strange.
How do you even go about doing that too? Like you're faking this contest that you're saying this woman's daughter won, and then what did they do whenever she got whenever she gave them the information that they wanted? Were they just yeah, your daughter's dead, by the way?
I don't know if this was a way to break the news to her or something.
That's going back to before when they said she was very attractive in the flyer. Thank you. So back to that. That's also being another sexualized thing. She's dead, but they do tell her mom that she won this beauty contest. Why? Why? That's a really good question. To bring her in, yes, but any mother, if you would have told her that your daughter
His dead.
or
They would have come.
son is dead, they would have came either way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems morally wrong.
Yeah.
Especially, like, misleading somebody and playing with their emotions.
Right.
Like, making them feel like, you know, their child succeeded in something and then saying, well, actually, your child didn't do any of this. They're just dead.
Yeah.
Like, that just doesn't seem morally right.
Yeah.
So, going to the suspects. Going from earlier how the police were sent her old address book, there were about 75 suspects that were taken from her address book, and they were all interrogated. And so the majority of the people in that address book had said that they only met briefly. And during the investigation, the police interviewed over 300 medical students from USC because of how surgical the cut was on her body.
Yeah.
So, like we were saying earlier with Red Manley, he was suspect number 1 because he was the last person to see her. So, obviously, he's going to be considered as a first suspect.
He's the police primary target.
Yeah.
That's why I've heard that, like, a lot of people, if they, like, find a body, they don't call it in.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to be involved
Mm-hmm.
and they don't want to be thought of as a suspect.
A lot of times someone can get like they're misled. They call it in and they're like, I found this body, and the police are like, did you find this body or did you cause it? I mean, some people are just like, I don't even want to deal with it, and I mean, I can't blame them.
Yeah, but I mean, something about Red is he eventually was cleared by police because he had already returned to San Diego when her body ended up being found much later than when he was known to have been with her. And eventually he also passed a polygraph test, but this was back in the 40s.
But go back to it. Then we talked about, wasn't this guy talked about as being wealthy, right? So like,
I believe so.
Right.
Wasn't he a star, a movie star? Like
he had some sort of fame. I do remember that.
Right.
Kind of
So
fame.
him going back to San Diego that quickly, I mean, you know, maybe he has his own plane. I don't know if that was possible back then, but I mean, it could have been. So he gets there quicker.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there. Yeah. So eventually, like I said, he was not ruled a suspect, but his life really derailed after this had happened. His wife eventually had to put him into a mental hospital because he pretty much lost his mind over the entire situation. And he ended up having an accidental fall and died exactly 31 years to the day of when he last saw Short alive. I mean, that just kind of gives me chills thinking about that. Like,
Perhaps that fall wasn't so accidental.
Yeah.
either it wasn't accidental or it was kind of a sign that, like, he fell and died 31 years to the day of the last time he saw her alive.
That's
The chances of that happening are like insane. And for it to be accidental, I agree with you. I don't think that was accidental.
right. I mean,
Or even if it was accidental, the timing on it.
Yeah, I mean that's insane.
I don't think that's. Is that coincidental?
I wouldn't take it
I
as a
wouldn't take it
coincidence,
as-
at least in
yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah, no.
on
there's
the
something
exact same day. I mean, that definitely cannot be coincidental.
Because, like, I think everything happens for a certain reason. And if you're gonna fall and die on the exact day 31 years later, I think that happened for a reason.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Now, I'm not saying he did it. I'm saying there has to be some sort of reasoning. Whether we're ever going to know it or not, there has to be some sort of reasoning on why it was 31 years to the day.
Yeah.
Right.
So, suspect number 2. His name is Joseph Dumas, and he claimed to be blackout drunk with Elizabeth right before her death, which was just a few days before she died. He claimed to be with her. And again, this is coming from him. This is not from a witness. It's just from him. So he originally confessed to killing her, which was later proven that he did not do it. Now, I think this is one of those cases where a lot of people say they did it just to try and kind of get fame out of it, to say, oh, look, I'm the one that did this thing. So I should be getting all the news coverage and the press coverage just to kind of put their name in a paper or something.
Right.
That's-
Publicity.
You get that a lot with these bigger cases, like for example with the Zodiac killer. There were a whole bunch of other people, these copycat killers who were pretty much just pretending to be the Zodiac killer, and it's like they found out that it actually was like they had nothing to do with that, but like separate crimes people try to pass off as the work of this big name criminal. And so, you know, just to get that, like, people will do anything for a little bit of fame.
I mean, he was proven that he didn't do it because he was clocked in at a military base at the time of her death.
Yeah.
Or at least when they had found her body, he was clocked in at a military base.
Right, and it's not exactly easy to, you know, get out of a military base.
Yeah.
For like a day.
You can't just
Yeah.
leave and come back. They don't. I don't think that's how it works.
It's not really how that works.
Yeah.
I don't think they really keep the doors open at a military base.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, I don't think they just allow people to come and go whenever they want.
Yeah.
That wouldn't make too much sense.
Not at all.
Alright, so the third suspect, and at least to me, he has the most stuff on him, and it makes the most sense. So, his name is George Hodel. And the reason that people think he is the one who did it is because his son has gone on a massive mission to prove that his father did it. Again, this can be one of the cases like before where they claim they did it or they claim one of their family members did it for fame and publicity. But it could also be, why would you want to throw your own family under the bus?
Yeah.
And his son said that as a child, his father had a secret room in their house where nobody was allowed to go, and he never found out what it was.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I just find that a little...
That's weird. Usually, I mean, I've heard of like houses where you don't want kids in the room or something like that, but never going in it your entire childhood.
Right.
That's. I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know if that doesn't happen.
I mean, you would think at least out of curiosity, one day if he was home alone, he would go into the room and see what was in there. Just to see what his dad had in there if he was so forbidden from going there.
And from what I've seen, this George Hodel, he is not a good guy. From all the stuff I've seen, he is not a good guy at all. I mean, like
you'll see later, he is not a good guy.
yeah. So it makes sense to me that his own son would try to, you know, prove that his father killed this woman because of some of the stuff that his father put him through as a child.
Yeah.
It's just, it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
And so a little bit of background on George and why his son thinks he did it. So George went to medical school, and so his son thinks that he knew how to surgically cut a body and drain it of all its blood. Which, in my mind, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
But with some of the other things we've seen throughout this case, it could really be anybody.
Yeah.
Because there are so many medical students around that area,
Right.
that could have just been a cover-up.
Yeah.
And so, like Joey was saying, this guy isn't that great of a guy. He had 5 different wives and 11 children. And so his son, Steve, said that he had a picture of Elizabeth, and he showed everybody this picture. His father had this in his possession, but when it was first examined, experts say that there was an 85% chance that it was not her, and they were almost sure that it wasn't her. But that picture was re-examined in 2014, and now they're 95% sure that it was her in that picture. And before he died, the police officers did suspect him of murder, and he was booked in prison for murder. And they even hooked him up to listening devices, where on this device they heard him say that he would like to get a connection made in the DA's office. And people think this meant that maybe he was paid off by police, but that was never confirmed. And another thing that he said that really puts him in a bad spot is, he said, supposing I did kill the Black Dahlia, they could not prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary anymore because she's dead. So if that tells you what type of guy we're dealing with here,
Right.
I don't know what does.
I mean,
He's saying that he either had his secretary killed or he killed his secretary. And that just makes you think, how many more people are on that list?
Right.
Yeah.
It really does make you think of, like, supposing he did do this, how many more people other than just Elizabeth, how many more people died at the hands of this man?
Yeah.
Right. So
I mean, and now I kind of see why his son might be a little mad at him and maybe trying to prove. If he had 11 other children, I mean, and 5 other wives, I mean, that shows some sign of he does not care about his family. I mean, pretty much. He had 5 wives and 11 children with those 5 different wives. I mean, that could be maybe his son just never got to know him. He doesn't feel the connection. He doesn't like him.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot about this man, and if I'm remembering correctly, from what I've seen, he had multiple daughters. Obviously, it's kind of hard to not have children of both genders. And when you have 11 kids, it's kind of hard to not have a nice mix in there. And I'm pretty sure that at least one I know, and then maybe more, he would sexually assault his daughters.
Oh my gosh.
So like this is truly just an awful person. So I wouldn't put it past him to kill people too. I mean,
yeah. I mean, he kind of has like the perfect, like the exact mental thoughts that a murderer would have. Like, I mean, all of them seeing of his emotions, the things he's done, they all point to like, this is a guy who would kill someone.
Right. I mean, go back to it. What was that room that he didn't want his son going into really meant for?
And so Steve ended up going back to his childhood home where, like Tristan, you just said, this secret room is, and this is where Steve thinks the murder could have taken place. And so he brought cadaver dogs, and they picked up scents of dead people pretty much everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
And maybe it was because many people, or just Elizabeth, had died in this house, in that room. And the LA District Attorney came forward and said that based on the results of Steve's investigation, I would have no reservations about filing 2 counts of murder against George Hodel. So basically, this attorney is saying, I would pretty much gladly say he killed at least 2 people. And just one final point is, there were a bunch of random calls that came into the police department, and these calls were saying that the person on the line was confessing to killing the Black Dahlia, or someone who called and said police officers are the ones who killed her. But I think we can all agree we're kind of on the same page here.
Yeah, we
all strongly feel that it's George Hodel.
I don't think there's any mystery as to our conclusion.
I think we all are on the same page with that. There's not really any mystery there.
Right. Like every ounce of evidence that I've heard so far points directly to this man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we all kind of are in agreement that we all think it's George Hodel, and you guys all.
100% George. I think it was George.
Most definitely.
It definitely amazes me that they still have this case, quote unquote, unsolved. It's fairly obvious in my opinion.
Yeah, to us it seems obvious, but it's still unsolved in legal aspects. So, at least from our opinion, it's solved because we think it's George.
I think we solved this one.
Yeah.
We think we've solved it, but we can't go into court and say this is who we think it is, and the dude's dead.
Yeah.
So we can't do
Even
anything
if we
against him
there's
anyways.
nothing that's gonna happen.
Even if they solve this case, I mean, it's over. It's long gone.
I mean,
Yeah.
There's
no.
That's like finding out who Jack the Ripper was now.
Yeah.
That's 1800s or something.
Yeah. And so this is the end of episode 1 of the University School of True Crime podcast.